Welcome everyone to our weekly edition of the Chaburah, the Parsha Chaburah. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and I know Yom Tov is coming up, so we have a lot of preparing to do for the Yom Tov of Shavuos. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for giving me the opportunity to actually be able to mention words of His Torah, to discuss words of His Torah, to prepare words of His Torah for this year. And I want to tell you, it's the highlight of my week. Besides the other things I do, it's one of the highlights of my week to be able to sit on a Motzei Shabbos on a Sunday afternoon, a Sunday morning even, and prepare the Chaburah. Even this afternoon I was still preparing a little bit, but the knowledge I get, the ideas I get is tremendous, because I get to look up everything that I see. So I do thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for that. I would like to also thank Chazaq for giving me the opportunity to do the work I do. And it's a big honor. It's a big honor to be able to go into the public schools, to deal with college students, to just be makarev people, because mitalmida yoser mikulam, the benefits that I get from preparing, from teaching, from seeing the light, that switch that goes on in a student's eyes when he gets it, it's just very, very special. I'd also like to mention that Torah Anytime is having a tremendous fundraiser to raise money for all the shiurim they give. It's a big operation. There's a lot of cost. There's a lot of cameras, a lot of people out doing what they got to do to give you those shiurim. So they're having a special raisathon, it's called, to raise money for hours. You're not just buying random things. You're buying hours of learning. They're offering 25 cents for every hour of learning, for every hour of a shiur that's being given. That means if somebody gives $250, he gets 1,000 hours that are eternal, that are his, of shiurim that are being given out. That's an unbelievable, good price. It's a great deal. $250, 1,000 hours of Torah. That's unbelievable. And of course, if you give $2,500, you get 250,000. I think. No, how much is it? 10,000, sorry. 10,000, my math wasn't always great. 10,000 hours for 2,500, but that's eternal hours, that internal hours that a person put in a little bit from his pocket, and he gets a great reward. So it's called the raisathon.com. It's RAISETHON.com/TorahAnytime.com. Please go on to that, and there's many posts out there that are posting this raisathon, and give whatever you can give. This week's Parsha's Bamidbar is the first Parsha in the fourth book of the 5 books of the Chamishi Chumash Torah. It's the fourth chelek. It's Bamidbar. Now, obviously, Shavuos is next week, Mitzvah Hashem, Thursday night. So we will have one more shiur Wednesday night before Shavuos. But I want to discuss a little bit of Shavuos, and I want to discuss a little bit of the Parsha. So before we even begin, I want to just give a random story that I think not everybody gets to listen to the whole shiur. They're not interested, they're busy, it's too long, 100%. So I want to give at least a 3, 4, 5 minute story that a person can get some inspiration, and then if he wants to not listen anymore, at least he benefited from a tremendous story. So there's a story of a very, very big tzaddik, a very big gadol, someone that I met a few times, the Rosh Yeshivas of the Rosh Yeshivas, HaYeshivas. His name was Rav Shach. Now, the younger generation heard of him, the older generation were involved with him. He was the Rosh HaYeshiva of all yeshivas. He was like the Moshe Feinsteins in America. He was the Rosh Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, in Ponevezh. But besides being the great Rosh Yeshiva he was involved in all the psak and all the inyanim and all the important things that needed to be addressed in Eretz Yisrael, in America too. But he was the one that everybody came to. The Stipler would send people to him, Ron Leib, everybody would. What does Rav Shach say? The Chazon Ish would send people to him. So there's a story that Rav Shach, when he was 90-something years old, in his early 90s, he was very old, very frail. And he wasn't so healthy at the time. He was weak from all the years and years that he put into Klal Yisrael. And he told a couple of his gaboyim, people that were taking care of him, that when a certain woman, he said this earlier, a certain woman passes away in Bnei Brak, he wants to find out about it. He needs to find out about this woman when she passes away. She was an almana for many years, many, many years. And she lived quiet life. Nobody, they heard of her a little bit, but no one knew anything about her. But Shach, for some reason, needed to know when she's going to be niftaris. He should find out if she would be niftaris before him. So what happened was, it came about that Rav Shach was told that this woman was niftaris. She was actually almost 100 years old. Almost 100 years old. And she passed away, and Rav Shach said, where's the Levaya? I need to go to the Levaya. I need to go to this Levaya. So they said, you're older. Where is it? It's in Har Menuchos in Yerushalayim. It's travel. It was also a very, very rainy day, a very cold, wintry, rainy day. And for some reason, Rav Shach needed to go to this Levaya. They try to convince him, he's old, they'll tell him about it, they'll send representatives down. No, he needed to go, and he went. Came out, there was 15 men, enough for a little more than 1 million that showed up. Shach had 2 or 3 of his guys that came, so he needed to be part of this minyan. What happened was, though, after the Levaya was over, they wanted Rav Shach to go back into the car because it was raining and it was windy, and Rav Shach shouldn't, get sick, chas v'shalom. Rav Shach adamantly said, I need to stay here a little longer, and he gave the umbrella back to his gabayim, and he says, take the umbrella into the car, and I'm going to spend a few minutes here davening in the rain. So they couldn't understand. He thought, well, I need to do this. He sat for a few minutes. He stood there and he said his tehillim, whatever he said. He was crying over there. And then after 5 minutes, he goes back into the car to go back to Yerushalayim. They bundled him with some blankets, and he's on his way back. And they couldn't understand why Rav Shach was so adamant about going, why he needed to stay in the rain. What was the purpose of him, making sure that he was there at this particular Levaya. Anyway, they asked him, Rosh Yeshiva, tell us why. So he says, I'm going to tell you a story. And he says like this. He says, when I was, I don't even know what age it was, 13, 12 years old, his father passed away when he was that age. His mother was left in Almana. She was left in Almana. But she heard about the yeshiva in Kletsk, and she sent Rav Shach to this yeshiva. Now, she knew that would mean that she won't see him for a year. She won't see him for a year. But she said, I need you to go to this yeshiva. I need you to go learn there. I want you to grow over there. And she sent him. A 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy, she sent him. Comes to the yeshiva, and it was a young boy. And there were a lot of other bachrim there that were a lot older, but not just that, they were also much more learned than he was. Because this is new for him, this whole going away to learn and learning under certain gedolim. Anyway, he was there for a few weeks. And he didn't even have a bed, he said. He didn't even have a bed. He slept on the floor in a cold, wintry yeshiva that did not have proper, insulation. It was freezing. In the olden days, it wasn't like today where we have heating like we have. There was a furnace, and it would heat up as much as it could. So he actually slept on the floor. The older bachrim actually got benches. They were able to sleep on benches. So after a few weeks, he gets a letter. He gets a letter from his uncle in America. And his uncle said, I found out about the yeshiva, I heard about you. I know you're not so happy, which was true. I know you're not so happy. I know that the accommodations are terrible. I need you to come to America and work with me. I'll take you into my business. You'll be able to send money home to your mother, and then she'll come to America eventually, and you'll have a good life. Why do this to yourself? I know you're not happy. So he writes to his uncle, you're right, it's very difficult for me, and I'm not enjoying it as much as I should, but I don't know yet what I'm going to do. After a few weeks, he felt he couldn't take it anymore. He sends back his uncle that I am coming to America. Please send me a ticket. And within a week or two, he's going to get the ticket, and he's going to take a boat, and he would come to America, and that would be the end of Rav Shach, I guess, learning. This is when he was like I said, 13, 12 years old. He goes to the Rosh Yeshiva on a Wednesday. He was going to leave on Sunday. He goes to the Rosh Yeshiva on a Wednesday night, and he tells the Rosh Yeshiva that I'm going to America, and I'm not coming back, and I need to go. My uncle, he told him the whole story. And the Rosh Yeshiva said, he's a young little boy, what is he going to tell him already? He doesn't have a father. His uncle's offering him the golden Medina of America. It's going to be very difficult for him to say no. So he didn't say anything. He says, if you feel you have to go, what should I do? How can I stop you? That Friday morning, he said, a woman walks in. A woman walks in carrying some down blankets, some pillows, and a few winter coats. And she says, I want to give this to the Bachram of the yeshiva because my husband, she was a younger woman, she was, I don't know, 20 years old, her husband passed away. She was married a year or two, and her husband passed away. And he left a little business of these down blankets that he was selling, like a peddler, he was selling it. And she has no need for it anymore because she's planning on going back to live with her parents. But she just at least wanted to donate to the yeshiva a few of these blankets and a few of these pillows and coats. Rav Shach was lucky enough, he said, to get one of the blankets. Got one of the blankets. He was given one of the blankets because he was from the younger Bachram. He was given one of the blankets. Anyway, he said that Friday night he slept on the floor. But he slept with that blanket and he finally had a decent sleep. A decent sleep that he never had for the few months that he was there. And he thought about it, he realized this was a sign from Hashem that maybe he should stay. Maybe he should stay in the yeshiva a little longer. And what happened? He stayed and he became Rav Shach. The famous Rav Shach, the Gadol Hadar. All because of this woman. So Rav Shach said, I needed to find out. I needed to find out when this woman was nifteres, so that, because he knew that she was still living, so that I could give her the proper kavod, because everything that I have is due to her giving me that blanket that night, that day. And I need to wish her, to thank her for everything that she did for me. So they asked him, but why did you stay out in the rain? He says, because I needed to thank her appropriately. So I needed to feel a little bit what it felt like on those wintry nights, to feel the cold of those wintry nights. I needed to feel it so that I could give her the proper hakar satov for what she did for me. So he stood out a few minutes in the rain, Parsha, that he should feel the coldness in his bones a little bit in order that he should have the proper hakar satov. So I just thought that's an unbelievable story. It's a story that not everybody knows about. I mean, I read it in a reliable place. But it's an unbelievable story of how Rav Shach became Gadol Hadar, and really it's pretty much due to this woman who came in and gave that blanket, because he would have gone to America and who knows what would have happened. So that's one story. Now we're going to talk about the Parsha. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Bamidbar. Hashem says, V'daber Shabbat Moshe, right? Bamidbar Sinai. Hashem spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai. Many Mefarshim, many Rishonim, many Achronim ask on this Bamidbar Sinai. Why does it have to say in the wilderness? We know they're in the desert, right? All it has to say is Vaydaber Shama Moshe b'Sinai, by Sinai, by the place called Sinai. What's Bamidbar, in the wilderness of Sinai? So, like I said, many different Mefarshim discuss it, and I'm just going to go with a few. Why does it mention the word wilderness? So, I want to mention that wilderness has a tremendous milah, even though it looks like it's barren. And it has a lot of chesronos to a wilderness. When you think of the concept of wilderness, you think of a negative connotation. In the desert, you go out in the desert, there's nothing there, right? So Chazal teach us that the reason why the Torah was given in the desert and why it wants to specifically mention that it was given in the desert, because these are the ways that a person acquires Torah. A person that wants to acquire Torah, he needs to look at the desert and understand what this desert is teaching him, and what does he internalize from this mitziut, this fact of what a desert stands for. So one of the things Chazal teach us that a desert stands for, and what we learn from it, is a desert is hefker. What does hefker mean? It's open. It's like a public park. Anyone goes into a desert, and anybody can just do what he wants. No one's going to stop you if you go into a desert. They'll think you're nuts. But anyone that hangs out in a desert, like the Bedouins, they have no, in Israel, they have no official part of any part of Israel in a way. So they stay in the desert over there. So they're not here, they're not there, they're on their own. No problem. The desert is hefker. The Torah is teaching you that in order to acquire Torah correctly, a person has to make himself like a desert hefker. That he's not into the materialism of the world. He's not into the pleasures of the world. He goes out in a way, in his own mind he goes out, and he acts like he's in a desert, and therefore he's able to acquire Torah the way Torah is supposed to be acquired. It says in Pirkei Avos, Kachi darka shel Torah, this is the way of Torah, pas b'melech tochal, a person should eat bread in salt water, right? Umayim b'msurat tishta, and drawn water, v'al ha'aretz tishon, and he should sleep on the floor. Right? It's funny because you think that alone is chayetzar. No. Besides for that, you should live a life of suffering. Doesn't mean you should ask for it, but it's one of the prerequisites of becoming a Talmid Chacham, a tzaddik, a ben Torah. And then it says, if you do this, it will be good for you in this world and good for you in the next world, right? If you do it. So what is he telling us? It doesn't say this is the way of Torah that is high level, high standard. It says Torah. This is the way of Torah. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz explains this, that there isn't a better way or a good way or a higher level. No. Torah. A person has to keep away from Gashmiut if he wants to acquire Torah on the highest of levels. That doesn't mean a person can't have a nice steak, a good steak. Doesn't mean a person can't have a nice house. But a person, if he wants to acquire Torah the way it's meant to be acquired, needs to lessen his physical pleasures, needs to lessen a little bit his Gashmiut in order for the Torah to seep in. Because if you have less from the outside affecting you, you have more that you can bring into your neshama. Therefore, the desert teaches us that you have to be hefker and have lack of physical pleasures to a certain degree in order to acquire Torah on its highest of levels, in the levels that it's meant to be acquired. Another thing it teaches you, anava, humbleness, right? The desert has nothing to talk for itself. What does it say? It doesn't have water, doesn't have trees, usually it doesn't have flowers, there's nothing, dirty sand and mountains. Some people love that too, don't get me wrong. But as a general rule, the desert teaches you how to be humble. Therefore, Hashem said, I'm giving the Torah in the desert and not in Eretz Yisrael, because I need you to understand, in order to acquire Torah, you need to also be humble. And that's why Sinai, Bamidbar Sinai, because Har Sinai was a humble mountain because it was the smallest mountain. Hashem could have given his great Torah on the biggest mountain in the world, right? Or wait at least to go to Eretz Yisrael in the beautiful, no. Humble, the smallest mountain. Because when a person makes himself humble, that's when he can acquire Torah. Only when he makes himself humble. Now, another thing we learn from a desert is emunah and bitachon, faith and emunah in Hashem. How? You go on into the desert, it's a little scary, you know. There's no lights, there's no life, right? No life. You're on your own. You're on your own in a way. When you go to the desert, you actually psychologically know that when you camp out in the desert, I'm camping out because I want to take this challenge of being alone. You know, you hear the sounds of the nighttime, you know. But the desert teaches you, emunah and bitachon, that Hashem said, I took you into the desert to get the Torah in the desert, that you should rely on me and should have emunah and bitachon in me. And therefore you have only you, the man, the water, whatever it was, the clouds of glory, the fires, the anani hakavod, the eish that was always there at night. A person should what? That a person should rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we have a lot of different reasons why this mountain and the Midbar teach us how to acquire Torah. Now, Rav Elia Lapian says that a beautiful thing, and it has a lot to do with Shavuot too. Rav Elia Lapian says, it says in Yirmiyahu, it says, Perik Beis, I think in the Pasuk Beis, it says, Zacharti lo chesed nurayach. Hashem tells the Jewish people, Zacharti lo, I reminded myself, I reminded of what you did, the chesed of your youth. What did you do? Lech tech acharai b'midbar. You went after me in the desert. You followed me into this wilderness. Like I said, no gashmias there. It's spooky, it's scary. It's emunah b'tachon that you need, the precious. It's a wilderness, right? You followed me. So Hashem says, I remembered the chesed of your youth. We were just engaged, just married. That you went after me in the desert. What does he mean? So Elia Lapian says like this. You know, a husband that's married for 50, 60 years tells his wife at the age of 70, 80, whatever it is, I need to move to, I don't know, Alaska, let's say, right? A wife that loves her husband and married already 50, 60 years, for the husband, for whatever reason, wants to move to Alaska, it's not so shocking that she'll go with him, right? We have a whole life together. If that's what he wants to do, it's not that shocking if a wife follows her husband. But what happens if somebody just gets engaged and they were planning on moving to Eretz Yisrael, and right before the wedding, the chassan tells the kala, instead of living in Eretz Yisrael or Lawrence or Cedarhurst or Main Street, we're moving to the North Pole. That's an eye-opener. Most kalas, I believe, would probably, after a while, break off the shidduch, probably. I'm saying parents would probably be very, like wondering what is going on here, right? So probably she wouldn't go with him. So Hashem is telling us, Rabbi Lapian says, that Hashem says to Klal Yisrael, Zacharti lo chesed nu'urayach. I remember the chesed you did in your young youthfulness, when you were young. What did you do? Ahavas klula sayach. We were just married by Man Torah, right? We were engaged and we got married 40 days later, right? 49 days later we got married, right? What did you do? Lech tech acharai Bamidbar. You accepted willingly to follow me for 40 years. It came out to be in the desert. So therefore, the emunah and bitachon that Klal Yisrael has, that when Hashem took them in the wilderness with all the fears of the scorpions and the snakes and the nations of the world, they're also open to attacks from other nations that know they're in the desert, like Amalek and other nations that would want to come and attack them, right? Therefore, they had the emunah and bitachon. So Hashem says, I remember this chesed that you did for me. And Chaim Shmulevitz says, when you go over to a child that's a year or 2 or 3 years old even, and he's in his mother's arms, and she's shopping somewhere, right? And what happened? You ask the child, where are you? He doesn't say, I'm in the mall. He doesn't say, I'm by Target, wherever they are. He says, I'm in my mother's arms, right? That's where I am. My mommy's holding me. I'm in my mother's arms. She goes an hour later someplace else. You ask the child again, where are you? He goes, I'm in my mommy's arms, right? Therefore, Chaim Shmulevitz says, we had a emunah and bitachon that we felt that when we were in the desert, we were always in the arms of our mother, we were always in the arms of Hashem, that He was always guiding us, always protecting us, and always there for us. So therefore, the desert itself symbolizes the great emunah and bitachon that we had in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that He guided us and He protected us and He watched over us. Now I want to tell you something very beautiful. I was actually 2 nights ago, I was at a parlor meeting by a student of mine, right actually 3 houses away from here actually. His name was Rabbi Yaakov Skachlis. He has a big Talmud Chacham. It's scary that I even call him my student because he definitely is a lot greater than me in learning, and he's an unbelievable Talmud Chacham, and he's a very big tzaddik, and he has a big koil, and he wrote many sfarim. He's a big Sholem Meshiv in Eretz Yisrael. I'm humbled that he even calls me Rebbe. That's the truth. That is the truth. Because I started him off at least a little bit. I had a little bit of his beginnings. So Rabbi Olbaum Shlita, who's the Rav here in Kew Garden Hills, tremendous speaker, tremendous Talmud Chacham, and tremendous Posak. And whenever he speaks, it's always a treat for me. So he grabbed and spoke at this parlor meeting. And he was talking about what it means, the greatness of Torah. He was talking about the greatness of Torah, what it means that a person should be mischazek, he should strengthen Torah through his supporting of Torah. So he said over 2 unbelievable things that I want to share with you. The first thing he said over is from a Gemara Psachim, Daf Kuf Yud Beis Amid Aleph. Psachim Kuf Yud Beis Amid Aleph. And it goes on to say Rabbi Akiva was teaching Torah to the masses. He was taken captive by the Romans, and they were going to kill him. He knew this meant death, because that's what they said. Whoever teaches Torah in public is going to be killed. And there were people before him that were killed for the same thing. There were other, the 10 Asura and Rugi Malchias, that were even killed before Rabbi Akiva for teaching Torah in public. So he knew what that meant. He's captured it. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was able, his Talmud, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, who was his only 2 Talmidim got smicha from Rabbi Akiva. I think it was Reb Meir and it was and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. The only 2 people that ever got smicha from Rabbi Akiva. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was a big Talmud of Rabbi Akiva. But who Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was just shows how great Rabbi Akiva was. He was able to sneak in, I'm sure with Shem HaMefarish or whatever he said, he was able to sneak into the prison. And he comes to his Rabbi Akiva, and he tells his Rebbe, Lamdeni Torah, teach me Torah. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai asked Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva told him, Loi, I will not teach you Torah. So what happened here? So the Mefarshim explained the reason why Rabbi Akiva didn't want to teach Reb Shimon Bar Yochai Torah, not because he was upset, not because he was scared, because he's anyway in prison. He knows what's going to be. It wasn't like he was scared. But what? That he felt that if he taught Reb Shimon Bar Yochai Torah, word would get out, and somebody would find out, and therefore they would put Reb Shimon Bar Yochai to death. So he didn't want to teach him Torah. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai tells his Rabbi Akiva, he says to him, if you don't teach me Torah, I will maser you, I will call my father Yochai, and I don't know why dafka him, and we will maser you, we will tell on you to the authorities. Now, what would he say already? He's anyway in prison. Masha asked the question, what are you going to tell on Rabbi Akiva? He's already in prison. So what is he referring to? I'm going to tell on you. There's nothing to tell on him. He's there already. But he said these words to his Rebbe. I will tell on you to the government, Lashon Hara, about you. Wow. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, one of the lowest things a Jew can do, it's brought down, is when another Jew goes to the government or goes to non-Jewish courts and he tattletales, maser, a moser he's called. One of the worst sins. I know somebody, I'm not going to mention his name obviously, I know somebody that went to prison for 2 years on a white-collar crime. He went for 2 years and he had information that could have put somebody that worked with him in jail for many years, and he would get off the hook. I know the guy, I'm telling you, I know the story. The guy's a big tzaddik today, actually. The guy who went to jail is a big tzaddik, the one that didn't want to say. But what did he didn't want to tell on his neighbor, and he took the hit and went for 2 years to prison. Because he didn't want to tell on someone else. So it's not so posh. No one should ever be challenged like that. No one should have friends like that. No one should ever be challenged like that. But I want to tell you, unbelievable what it means to be moser. You don't tell on somebody to the government. Yet Reb Shimon Bar Yochai threatened his Rabbi Rabbi Akiva, that if you don't teach me Torah, I will maser on you. So like I said, the Masha asked, what's the benefit of it? He's anyway in prison, right? So what's going on here? So Rabbi Yaakov Naiman in his Sefer Darkei Musar says an unbelievable thing. Unbelievable. When I heard that, I got so emotional. My mom almost cried in front of these people sitting there by this parlor meeting. It was so special. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was telling us a lesson, was telling Rabbi Akiva that if you don't teach me Torah, I can fall to a level that's so low that I could even be moser on my Rebbe. That without teaching Torah, I can fall without the lifeline, without the protection, without the guidance of Torah. I could fall where I'll even be moser on my Rebbe. Therefore, you must teach me Torah, otherwise I'm done. Now, Shimon Bar Yochai knew a lot. He knew a lot. Believe me, he taught enough. Yet this is the power of two things: what a Rebbe means and what it means to learn Torah from your Rebbe. That he actually felt that if his Rebbe won't teach him, well, how much more is he going to teach him? A little bit. Well, he taught him already all these years. He gave him smicha already. It's only going to be for a little short period of time. No, every minute of learning from your Rebbe is life and death. Every minute of getting Torah from the source that gives you life is life and death. So if that source is cut off, it's like somebody cutting off the oxygen tube that's on your mouth. The oxygen mask that's on your mouth, you cut it for 2-3 minutes, the guy dies. Within a few minutes, he's dead. But no, you're dead, finished, that's it. That's how Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai looked at it from learning an extra few minutes from his Rebbe. Unbelievable what it means, the koach of Torah. And this is, let's be honest, these are people from that generation. What are we going to say today? How do we need Torah? Without Torah, how do we survive? I want to tell you that I once went into a shul at 4:30 in the morning. I used to write booklets. Remember the Parsha booklets? So I would stay up sometimes, honestly, right the day before that I had to have it printed, and Rabbi Asaf used to have it printed for me. We used to do it together. I would sometimes spend the entire night getting it done to make sure that it's out for print in time. So I honestly would stay up the whole night, literally in the office, and then I'd come to Shari Tefillah, I'd make some photocopies, send it to Rabbi Asaf, Chaim. Anyway, so I walk in at 4:30 in the morning, and I see two individuals sitting and learning. It wasn't the first time I've seen them. I've seen them before there. 4:45, it wasn't 4:30. 4:30 they get up, they told me. 4:45, 4:50, they're in the Bet Midrash already. Wealthy people. I'm not talking about people that have no jobs. People that are, they have Baruch Hashem, they could sleep for years, and it wouldn't affect their bank account. Trust me. One of them was average, the other guy was a very wealthy guy. And I went over to him, I said, I don't understand you. 4:50, you get up at 4:30, 4:50, you're already in the Bet Midrash learning. I mean, that's unbelievable. Why? I knew why, I just wanted to hear it from his mouth. He says, Rabbi, because Torah is oxygen. I can't go out to the workforce. I can't go out to the workforce at 7:30 after I daven unless I had an hour, 2 or 3 of oxygen in my system. Otherwise, how am I supposed to survive in the outside world? If I don't learn 2-3 hours before davening and then go to work, I cannot survive in the outside world. So we have to understand the power of Torah, what Torah is in our lives. You know, every year comes Shavuos and we renew our vows to Hashem. Every year comes Shavuot and we renew our marriage to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Torah. We must prepare ourselves for this marriage, okay? You come prepared, your suit, the orchestra, the photographer, the flowers, the food, the desserts, the entertainment, the singers, the invitations coming in, a lot going on to prepare for a wedding. What do we do to prepare for our wedding to Hashem? What do we do to prepare for our wedding Shavuot? We also have to come prepared. You can't just walk in one day and just say, hi, I'm here for Shavuos. You need to prepare yourself. You need to come clean. You want to come pure. Just like a person takes a good shower and puts on a new suit and a new tie and a tuxedo. Our suits, our tuxedos are our actions when we come prepared. You don't need to wear the fanciest suit on Shavuos, but you want to come dressed up in your mitzvot, dressed up in your Torah, dressed up in your good deeds, so that when you meet the bride, the groom, when you meet the person, you meet HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you meet the Torah, there's a shine on your face and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's face, because He knows how beautiful you look, not physically but spiritually. So we have a week now, a little more than a week to prepare ourselves. We have a little more than a week, and we should take advantage, starting tonight even, to prepare ourselves. The big day's coming. You know, people have a calendar. You know, I remember my daughter, she got married. I'm sure a lot of people have it. There's a clock. I never saw this till then. There's a special clock, like an alarm clock, that has a countdown on it to the wedding. And it has like minutes and seconds and everything, and there's hearts on it. I don't even know. They make a whole thing out of it. It's like sitting there, you know, countdown. We're having a countdown also to our wedding. And prepare ourselves for the countdown. Prepare ourselves for that countdown so that when you come in, you go to the mikveh Erev Yom Tov. If you don't go to the mikveh, go Erev Shavuot. You know, people go. A lot of people go that morning at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning after learning. They go actually to the mikveh, so that even though they might have gone right before, that night before anyway they went. But you want to go before Kabbalah Torah to the mikveh. You want to come pure. You want to come cleaner, right? You learned the whole night. Maybe that's why you have to go to the mikveh, because what goes on by learning at night sometimes is not so Parsha. You know, between the sushi and the food, you know, people come in. I don't make a joke about it, but you start learning at 12, 1 o'clock already after the meal, and then you go right away. You sit down for a minute. You open. I know I've done this. You open up your sefer. I'm starting soon, and then you go check out the food. And you meet this guy. You get a coffee. You didn't even sit down. You're getting a coffee already. Anyway, and busy. You're getting 14 coffees during the night. You had 10 pieces of I don't even know what. I hate to say it, there are places, scary, it's a true story, there are places to make barbecues for the night. No barbecues. In the backyard. In the back of the shul. I'm talking about from shuls. From shuls. Really from, and they have hot dogs and burgers, like it's the summer, like it's July 4th weekend or something. No, and how many people, how do you go back to learning if you're sitting there eating franks and burgers? You just finished the meal for 4 hours. You came in at 12, 1 o'clock because you had the meal for 4 hours. Now, I get it if it needs to bring people in, and I get it if you need it for Kiruv, and if I get it if somebody wouldn't come otherwise, I get it. But if you don't need the frank or burger, or you don't need the sushi, and you don't need the cake, and you don't need the thing, give it more time. Spend more time in front of the Gemara. My father always finishes Masechtas Tamid every year. He finishes the whole Masechet he gives a shir for, at least not now, but at least years ago, until 3-4 years ago. He would give a shir from 11 o'clock. He actually starts 11 straight till 4:30, straight to finish the Masechta. Nobody even gets up from his crew. Okay, they want to finish it. They sit there, and every year he finishes it with them, and he goes through different inyanim with them. Therefore, prepare yourself. A big Yom Tov is coming up. You also will enjoy the Yom Tov if you come prepared. There's nothing like coming prepared to a test. There's nothing like coming prepared to an event. There's nothing like coming prepared to if you have a boss that needed something done for him, you know, a program or something. Coming with all the material prepared. So I wish you all a very special Yom Tov, a very special Chag, and we should all be zocha to accept upon the Torah, but not just accept the Torah, to have that Torah be accepted, but through the year, it lingers with you. You know, people remember usually that Shana Rishona. People remember the good times. You remember the wedding. You look at the album over and over again, right? You get the wedding album. You look it over. So we should have not just the acceptance of the Torah, but it should continue through the rest of the year. Thank you all for coming.